Greetings everyone, this is Peter Sco from Music is a Journey. Today I want to talk about some of my favorite long-form songs from the last 10 years or so. I actually got this idea a little while back because I had heard at the time that Yes were coming out with a new album and that there were going to be some long-form songs on it, and I was wondering if they were going to do some more like 18-20 minute epic type songs or not. And then also around the same time I received two albums from Peter Matukniak, one of them Kinetic Elements, The Lesser Light, Chasing the Lesser Light, and the other one Low Bait Scarps, You Have It All. And I did a video a few weeks back giving my impression of those two albums, as well as featuring clips of some of my favorite parts from those albums. And both of those albums actually did have some songs running over 17-18 minutes long, which I really enjoyed. So it got me thinking about my favorite, long form songs. And then, of course, a lot of them are the classics from the 1970s. But I thought more about what are some of the more recent ones from, let's say, the last 10 years. And so I decided to go through my iTunes library and just scroll through. And anytime I saw an album that I thought probably has a long form song on it, and was probably also within the last 10 years, I stopped and took a look. And I ended up with a list of 40 songs, coming to a total of about 15 hours of music. Now, 40 songs is probably not as much as what some people could come up with. If I were bringing home, like 3 or 4 dozen prog albums every year, I probably could have come up with a list twice as long, if not more. But, each year I'm into different things. Some years I'm into 60s psychedelic stuff, and another year I'll be into like 70s hard rock, or another year I'll be getting into like classic death metal and thrash metal, and my tastes keep changing year after year, or not changing, but just like moving different areas. So there are some years where I just didn't buy so many new prog or even progressive metal, or even some extreme metal bands do some pretty long format songs, like Bell Witch did a double album of one song. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to take a look at what I had. I went through the 40 songs, and I thought I was going to try to narrow it down to about 10 songs, but I knew there were going to be some honorable mentions. And truthfully, there were some songs I thought, oh, it's really going to be hard to take these off the list, and I had over 20. But then finally, after a little bit more, listening to them 1 or 2 more times, I was able to narrow it down to 10 with a few honorable mentions to mention. Now, before that, I just wanted to quickly kind of review the history of long-form songs in rock music. And I wrote about this on the Music is a Journey blog. I did it in 3 parts, and I don't know, it was like several years ago now. It's basically, since doing the YouTube channel, I don't really touch the blog anymore. There's just not enough time to do everything. But anyway, going back to, it was around 1966, it was Bob Dylan, and on his Blonde on Blonde album, on the 4th side, he had a song 11 minutes and 22 seconds long called Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. And this was the only song on the 4th side. So, 11 minutes, 22 seconds, there's still room on an album to put more songs, but, that was maybe one of the first in popular music that with that kind of, one side is one song. However, by November of the same year, 1966, Love released their El Capo album, and the second side was Revelations, which took up the whole side B and was over 18 minutes long. I'm not sure about 1967, my research didn't turn up anything, but by 1968 we had 3 side-long tracks. Actually, one of them was technically not side-long because there was another song on the side B. But first of all, of course, we have Iron Butterfly in January of 1968, releasing In-A-Gadda Da Vida. The song actually was never intended to be that 17-minute plus epic that it became. It was just supposed to be a 3-minute, rock out, psychedelic, hard rock, acid rock track. But the engineer said he wanted to have the band kind of run through the song and have everybody play their instruments so he could do like a kind of sound check for everybody. And so they just, rolled with it and ended up coming out with this 17-minute plus song, which they decided, let's put that on the album as it is. So that was pretty cool. Then we also had, what's it called, Procol Harum. They released an album. I don't have it. What was it? I can't remember the name of the song now either. It was a really kind of obscure title. But anyway, they had a short song and followed by a 17-minute track on their album. And then the Collectors, they decided that they were going to write on their debut album for side B a kind of like a suite, a rock song in a suite with different movements. And I can't remember what the song is called now. I used to have the CD sitting right here on the shelf behind me, but it's packed away somewhere in another box now. But something about like this love or that love, or something about love anyway. But yeah, so you know, by 1968 we already had 4, possibly 5 side-long tracks out there. And I do remember hearing about a band who released an album that was just one track around 67, 68. But it was largely a jam session that just, you know, ran over 35 minutes or something, and they just decided to put the whole album out like that. You know, after that, you know, it's not until we get into around 1970, then the side-long epics really start to roll out. We have Pink Floyd's Atom Heart Mother. We have, of course, Yes in 72 with Close to the Edge. We had Nectar putting out A Tab in the Ocean, which was 16, 17 minutes long and also taking up a side of an album. Genesis, Supper's Ready, which I think was 72 as well. Yep. Caravan, King Crimson, Focus, Vandergraaf Generator. I don't know, it's like just about any band that was, you know, a progressive rock band in the early 70s there, just about everybody was putting out at least one album with a side-long track. Yes, of course, then going on doing a double album with, you know, one song on each side. And then, you know, Jethro Tull just saying we're going to do like a whole album that is just one track, which they did for Thick as a Brick and A Passion Play. And after that, I think the side-long epics began to dwindle. I think Yes Relayer was probably one of the last ones. And, you know, and then for a while it was just not really fashionable to do that. There may still have been bands doing it, like, of course, Rush, 2112, and Fountain of Lamneth I don't really count as a side-long epic because it is basically 6 tracks. Just put together all as one, but they actually do have a beginning and an end. So I don't know. And of course then, you know, the Hemispheres song. But yeah, side-long tracks were not really a big thing in the latter half of the 70s. The actual first side-long track I ever heard was Venom's At War with Satan from their 3rd album. Which I thought was, at the time, I just thought, that's pretty cool. Yeah, they did like, you know, one really long song with different parts, just, you know, all on one side. It didn't really strike me as being anything all that fantastic, like as far as the concept of doing a side-long track. It was just kind of unusual, you know. But anyway, so yeah, let's get into now some of these songs that I want to pick out that I've listened to in the last little while. First of all, we're going to cover the honorable mentions. This is Société de Glace, which is a French-Canadian black metal band. And they have a self-titled album here, which was released, I don't remember when, there's no date on the back now. There's a Fleur de Lis, so you know they're from Quebec. But this is a 50-minute track, self-titled track, Société de Glace. And when I first got this, I didn't know this album was just one track, so I was kind of like, oh shoot. I was kind of hoping for an album of, you know, 10 to 12 tracks. But actually, when I listened to it, it's basically the same as if you listen to an album, because the track is broken up, of course, into different parts. You'll have the more like traditional black metal type thing. You'll have also some parts that have almost like more doomier type riffs. There'll be some, you know, acoustic parts, or like a little bit more kind of almost shoegaze black metal type parts. And of course, there's even the part with, you know, the footprints, you know, the footfalls in the crunching in the snow, which I think a lot of black metal albums need to have. But anyway, it's very well done, and I can't pick out a favorite track like I would with their other albums, but I can listen to the whole thing all the way through and find that it is done well enough that I'd say it's worth mentioning. It's a good album. It's a good song. Okay, another honorable mention goes to Sloan. They are basically a power pop band, but it's kind of dangerous to call them power pop because they have so many influences and they're such creative songwriters. So power pop just, you know, is kind of like like saying like the Beatles are power pop, right? Anyway, they did an album called Commonwealth some years back, and what they decided to do, since each of the members is a writer and a lead singer, and they're big fans of Kiss when they were younger, they decided to do where everybody gets a side. and everybody wrote, two of them wrote 5 songs for their side, one guy only wrote 4 songs, but one guy, he just decided he didn't know how to turn all the bits and pieces he had into individual songs, so they just said, why don't you just, put it all together and just make one monster track, which is over 17 minutes long. And it works. Okay, it does start off a little bit, kind of puzzling, because you hear dog barking and there's some a little bit discordant piano, and it sounds like somebody's beating out some complex rhythm with a bunch of tools in the tool shed or whatever. But it does eventually break into a proper song, and then it just carries through with all these different parts, some of them very short, some of them a bit longer. We've got brass coming in one part, we've got children's, I think it's just all the band members' children's singing, kind of a children's choir in one part. And it's actually very well done. Every time I listen to it, I find it's really great that they did that. So there we go. Worthy of mention for a kind of power pop band going ahead and doing a 17-minute plus track. So here's one I picked up not too long ago. This is the Tangents' latest release from last year, Songs from the Hard Shoulder. This album is 4 songs, and 3 of them going over 17 minutes long. And all 3 of those long songs are really good. And I think it was, let's see here. Yeah, it's the track The Lady Tied to the Lamppost. Yeah, that was the one, I think, out of all 3 songs that cleared the 17-minute mark. That was the one that I felt had the most going on. And this song really stuck in my top 10 until almost the very end. It finally got nudged off after I, formed my opinion a little bit better about some of the other ones. But it is a really cool song. It has the Tangents kind of jazz fusion type feel in it, but it also gets a little bit, edgy, a little bit harder in some parts. It's just got some all-out prog type stuff in some parts. So it's a very interesting, cool track. So I have to mention this album. Okay, this is Druckfarben, Second Sound, their second album. This should have been mentioned in my video about numbered albums with clever titles. This being their second album, and it's called Second Sound. Phil Narrow on vocals. Phil Narrow, passed away a few, 2 or 3 years back now, but unfortunate, very, very unfortunate that. He was a very talented singer. Sang a lot of kind of hair metal type, rock type stuff, but also appeared on a lot of prog albums as well. But they have the title track on here, Second Sound, is a really cool, interesting, incredible prog piece, and you've got Ed Bernard on electric, acoustic guitar, mandolin, banjo, violin. I mean, the guy plays like 5 or 6 different stringed instruments, and he's performing those throughout, in various parts of this song here. Just a really cool prog, little bit hard edge prog at times track, and very nice. It again was also lingering in my top 10 and finally just got nudged out near the end, but really worthy of mention. Next up, Southern Empire. Now, this is their first album. Their second album, Civilization, actually had 2 tracks running well over 20 minutes. I think one of them is 28 minutes long and the other one is something like 25. Both of them really cool tracks, but actually I preferred the long one off here, which is The Bridge That Binds. Good Lord, I really can't see this late in the day. I've been looking at the computer screen all day long. But anyway, just over 28 minutes as well. And first of all, I can't remember the guy's name now, the vocalist, but he's got a great set of pipes. He's got one of those rock voices where he can sing softly, he can sing powerfully, he can sing melodically, but he's always got this little bit of a fry in his voice, giving a bit of that rasp, which just sounds really cool. This song has just got so much going for it. Of course, Sean Timms, it's his band, and he's playing piano, pulling off one of his wicked piano solos in part of it. We have got violin coming in part of it. We've got a really hard rockin' part, almost metal in one part. And I think there's a guest vocalist who must be from a metal band because he's hitting those high notes in the background there. Really, really awesome. Yeah, and then there's just the main theme. The song is basically in 2 parts, I feel. And in the second part, there's this main melody, which is really beautiful and Yeah, it's a song that just goes through many different movements in it, from the progressive type stuff, the heavy stuff, the beautiful melodic stuff, the show off stuff, you know. It's really great. And I've probably listened to it 3 times in the last, couple weeks leading up to this. 15 hours of music to go through at least twice. Okay, then I think, are we moving into the top 10 yet? Okay, so actually I do have to mention Iron Maiden's Empire of the Clouds. So when this album came out, I thought it was really cool because I hadn't heard an Iron Maiden album since Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and I thought, wow, they're still really doing their thing, and they've got some songs that are like 10 minutes long and that. But after a while, I felt it was basically just Iron Maiden doing what they've always done, and so many familiar sounds and riffs. I kind of don't really feel inspired to listen to the album so much. But Empire of the Clouds, it's got that piano thing, and there is also a bit of orchestration in there. The story is really cool. Bruce Dickinson, I feel he's really reaching for some of those notes in some of the other songs, but I think he pulls off his vocal performance really very well on that one. And when he does get intense, and it feels like he's again stretching to get those notes, it is at a time where in the story things are becoming really stormy, and doom is in the air. And so the actual kind of, reaching feeling in his voice really suits the mood of that. So Empire of the Clouds, I've listened to it again a couple of times recently, and I just thought, yeah, that I really like it. I really think they did a great job of that for a song that's, over 18 minutes long. Moving on, IQ, Road of Bones. This album is probably like 8 or 9 years ago now, and I believe it is a concept album of a serial killer who buries his victims along the side of the road and just kind of covers their shallow graves with some stones. So IQ have this, they were one of the neo-prog bands to come out in the 1980s, and probably one of the more well-known ones. They have this atmosphere in their music. I don't listen to them all that often, but when I do, I really feel this is the IQ universe. This is the IQ atmosphere. Their keyboard player, longtime keyboard player, Michael Orford, is it? He is not on this album. They had a new guy come in, I think it was. He does a little bit more in the electronic type stuff, which I think some of the old bands, the old neo-prog bands, were doing around this time. Like Galahad also were starting to put in more electronic type keyboard stuff or whatever, mixed in with their harder rocking stuff, their 70s classic stuff, their neo-prog stuff, their classic prog stuff. IQ, however, they have their own atmosphere, like I'm saying, and this long track here, Without Walls, it's actually the third track on the album. I kind of get the impression the story is that the killer is, I'm not really sure if he's in a bit of a pinch there, getting caught, or he's been captured. I honestly don't remember, but there are just a lot of different moods going out in the music. Sometimes quite light, quite simple, but a little bit haunting, and then it also gets a little bit more into the harder section. You get that kind of electronica part coming in a little bit too, and building up to the whole conclusion to the song. IQ do long songs very well. They do concept albums very well, and I really enjoyed listening to that song again, since I haven't really listened to this album for probably a few years now, so it was nice to get that in the ears again. Another one here, this is Snakes and Angels Origins by Gore Music. Signed here by Mr. Gordo Bennett himself. Now, I know Gordo through his work with Colin Tench. He did the orchestration for the Colin Tench Project albums. I also know Gordo from doing some other things, connected with the guy on Facebook. I actually did the artwork for 2 of his singles, instrumental singles for his Gore Fusion project thing. But anyway, this was Gore Music, Snakes and Angels, album cover not designed by me, and the opening track on here, The Beginning, which is in 7 parts. It's just really interesting. It starts with this whole bit, it sounds like a combination of the beginning of Rush Cygnus X1 with the beginning of Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil album, and a little bit the beginning of Van Halen's 1984 album. There's that kind of like thing going on where at times you think, oh, it's Rush, and it's kind of like Motley Crue here. It's a little more like Van Halen here with those synthesizers, you know. But it's a really cool song. It's got Pete Jones singing the vocals on here, and it just has lots of different stuff going on. It's in 7 parts, so, you know, you get the kind of gentle giant part with the different voices going. You get the kind of quirky orchestration part. You get the kind of more like, you know, heavy prog band part. You get some blazing guitar solos. You get acoustic guitar and then very beautiful acoustic guitar part. And then just some kind of like a little bit almost again electronica type part. So there's just so much happening in that song, and it's just really interesting track to listen to because you can't really get bored since he keeps serving up stuff constantly. Here's one I picked up fairly recently. This is Jonas Lindberg and the Other Side, Miles from Nowhere. This was one of the most talked about prog albums of 2022. My year-end video for that year was me checking out what the top albums were and making a list of the ones I would want to get. This was one of them, and I got it. Really cool stuff. It is very much like a crossover prog type album in parts. Very good puppy type melodies, lots of nice clean male vocals and female vocals, but it does also go into the progressive rock showdown type of thing where you've got the keyboard solos and the guitar solos and the polyrhythms and things changing up all the time. And I think it's the title track, yes, the final track, the title track, which looks like it's also in 5 parts, I think. Miles from Nowhere. It's not the title track, is it? No, it's not. It is the title track, Miles from Nowhere. And again, like, I love this whole album, and this song just really wraps it up nicely with the longest track on the album. And again, just having so many different things happening, sometimes getting a little bit on the hard edge type thing, sometimes some, like, you know, cool keyboard solos, and sometimes the female vocals and harmonies and all that. It's just, you know, really cool, modern prog type song with just lots of different stuff going on, which is what I really like about long songs, when they have lots of different stuff going on. Okay, now this was an album, this appeared in Prog Archive's top 100 for whatever year this was released in. I can't see. I think it's like 2015, 2016. This is a band called Gift, and Why the Sea is Salt. So I checked this out. I just kind of, you know, saw it was one of the top albums, and back in those days I was just picking out whatever the top albums were. I picked out a few that looked interesting without even listening to them. And at the time, I think I picked it up with some other ones, and I didn't really get into it. However, it does have a long song on here, 17, 18 minutes long. I think it's track 5. I think it's All These Things, track 5. And I just noticed there's a small dent in here, which I hate. It looks like probably a cat jumped up on the CD table, and that's a cat claw. And that'll teach me for leaving the CDs out on the table here all the time. But anyway, yeah, I think it's All These Things. It's really cool because, first of all, it starts off almost like, what's the song now? Nobody's Hero from Rush, from I think it's the Counterparts album. It almost starts off like that, the melody of the acoustic guitar. But it's very folky, and the singer's voice is very similar to John Mann of Spirit of the West, if you know who that is. John Mann also, you know, passing away 2-3 years ago, unfortunately. But anyway, I really like that sound. It's a very unique sound to his voice, and the singer here is very expressive with the voice. He uses it sometimes for, you know, theatrically, putting in more expressive. There's one part where he sings like, "We feed," and he drops it down, and the guitars shift into a kind of like early 70s heavy prog, almost like Uriah Heep or something type thing for that part. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, they're just, again, different things happening. You've got a kind of folky side, you've got this early 70s kind of heavy prog style stuff. There's another part where it's more like a little bit more lighter, friendly, late 70s type thing. There's, again, just like many different things. The song itself is divided into 6 parts. Maybe in a way a little bit like Big Big Train, but with their own unique sound. Yeah, Big Big Train. There was also a band that's got, you know, some long songs out there, and Glass Hammer as well, but I just didn't have any of their recent stuff to fit in, you know, within the last 10 years. But this one here, Gift, I really liked that song. I've listened to it 3 or 4 times recently, and I think it's time I listen to the rest of the album. But I should put the CD away before the cat makes any more marks in it. Okay, where are we at here? 5 more to go, so I should go a little bit faster. Here's Flaming Row, a Mirage, a portrayal of figures. I love this album. If you like Arion, any of his albums here, this is as good, if not better. We've got a concept story. It's a rock opera. You've got like different singers singing different parts. I think it's Martin Schnella on guitars. The guy can play pretty much anything. Merrick Arnold on keyboards and saxophones. Melanie Mao, one of the principal vocalists. I think she's actually the main vocalist in the band, you know, disregarding all the guests. And the final track, again, you know, we're looking at a track that's in 5 parts. Beautiful soft piano parts, heavier parts, almost getting into like industrial in some parts, showy prog bits, saxophone solos, again, just lots of great stuff. I love this album, actually. There are songs on here like Journey to the Afterlife. Somebody recently on Quora said, is there any band that can play like 10 different styles? And they listed 10 different styles, including rap and hip-hop. I said, well, not rap and hip-hop, but I think this song, Journey to the Afterlife, probably has 8 to 10 different styles in it, depending on how thinly you slice the cake. And Flaming Row, yeah, they can do anything. So, brilliant album, brilliant song. Okay, and then, yeah, well, here it is, Kinetic Element. So recently I did a review of this album and played samples from it with permission from Mike Visaggio and Pete Matukniak and Melodic Revolution Records. So I don't think I need to talk about it too much, but the title track, Chasing the Lesser Light, just a really retro 70s prog, like Triumvirate and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I don't know, just lots of really good early 70s progginess in there. Great keyboard solos, some cool guitar parts. Just a really cool song if you want to just go back and remember the days of the early 70s, like when I was 1 or 2 years old. But anyway, cool stuff. And you can hear, like I said, you can hear samples of the music in that video of mine. You just have to scroll back. It's 2 or 3 videos back after this one. Lobate Scarp, You Have It All. Pete Matukniak also playing guitar on here. This is a more modern prog album. Beautiful, great melodies in there. Lots of cool stuff happening in the music. Orchestration, violinist is a regular member in the band. Just some wonderful keyboard solos. I think Ryo Okumoto from Spock's Beard is a guest on here, as well as Jimmy Keegan, the drummer. I don't remember which songs they're on. But that, yeah, Flowing Through the Change, the final song on here, 17 minutes, 24 seconds. I love that song. I don't even have to be thinking of making a video about long format songs to just sit back and enjoy listening to that song. And the whole album is really terrific too. Lots of great tracks on here. So, coming down to the last 2. One, going back a few years now, 2016. This is an Italian band called Rursen Kruetz. Rursen Kruetz. A kind of mixture of Danish and German, it looks like. But anyway, Back to the Stars. The title track on here is 7 minutes 32 seconds. It's, in a way, it's like Supper's Ready, where it starts off, it's with piano, and it has this kind of main introduction to the whole thing, and then it just goes through so many different things, sometimes short, lasting only like a 10-20 seconds, other times a little bit longer. Keyboard solos, guitar solos, fun bits, fast bits, slow bits, and finally coming back down to the beginning of the song. You know, in the beginning of the song, he is coming from space, returning to Earth, and by the end of the song, he has found there's nothing left for him on Earth, and he's going back home, back to the stars. Yeah, cool band, great album. They have 2 albums out so far. A 3rd one is in the works now, from what I heard. Rursen Kruetz. Like that. Last one, this could be the #1 song, or it just might be, you know, one of the potential #1 songs. This is Wobbler's Dwellers of the Deep, which was their most recent album from, got a year on here somewhere. Oh, yes, but I can't see it. It's 2020, maybe? Anyway. Wobbler, a band from Norway, playing, again, retro prog. And in fact, I remember many years ago reading that they only use instruments and gear from between 67 and 75. I don't know if that's what they're still doing, but it sure sounds like it. But being from Norway, these guys do have their own flavor. So even if you can hear some Yes in here and some Emerson, Lake and Palmer and some other classic 70s prog stuff, they just have their own way to do it that for me is clearly a wobbler sound and not really easily mistaken for Yes or something like that. They just don't do it exactly like Yes do. They do it their own way. And the very long track on here, Mary Macabre, the final track, which is, I don't know how long it was it 23 minutes, 22, 25, I forget. But it's wobbler. It doesn't matter whether the songs are 10 minutes long, 12 minutes long, 18 minutes long, 25 minutes long. These guys just put so much into their music. Just great. And if you really like that classic sound of those instruments, but recorded very nicely in a modern way, it's just awesome. And I didn't listen to this album so much for the last year or two. Maybe when I first got it, I listened to it a lot. Coming back to it again, especially that song, I just realized, yeah, I have to have a wobbler epic song in this list of top 10s. So there we go. Dwellers of the Deep, Mary Macabre from Wobbler. And I've been assured by people who've seen them live that they are amazing live as well. Okay, so there is a bunch of long format songs, all of them over 17 minutes long, the longest being 50 minutes long in the, just over 50 minutes in the honorable mentions, and that's it. So, thank you for watching. If you've got some, favorites from the last 10 years or so, do tell me about it in the comments. I might want to check those albums out if I don't already have them here somewhere. Okay, thanks everyone. See you in the next video. Take care all. Bye.